Hi everyone, my name is Emma and I'm a PhD student at UW-Madison. I've been working with Dr. Sean Conley at UW-Madison, Dr. Laura Lindsay at Ohio State, and Dr. Rachel Vann at North Carolina State University to study some foliar fertilizers over the last 2 growing seasons. Today I'm going to share some of our results over 46 site years and then talk about ways that we can think about foliar fertilizers that continue to come onto the market after this project ends. Thank you so much for being here today.
This trial took place in 2019 and 2020 and tested prophylactic foliar nutrient applications. This means that we apply the nutrients preventatively before there were any visual symptoms of nutrient deficiency. We tested 6 different products, which included a mix of dry and liquid formulations and a mix of micro and macronutrient combinations. Despite the floods in 2019 and the pandemic in 2020, we had 46 sites in 16 different states. We had 20 sites in 2019 and 26 sites in 2020. Sites ranged from the Dakotas all the way down to Florida, so we had quite the diversity of growing environments. At our lowest yielding site average yield was around 30 bushels per acre, and at our highest yielding site, it was around 85 bushels per acre. This is a very straightforward multi-site randomized complete block design with 6 replications at most sites. There were 7 treatments, 1 untreated control, and 6 different foliar fertilizer treatments, and we used application rates within the manufacturer's guidelines. We used 6 different foliar treatments at all site years, and each product had a different mix of nutrients at different rates. I won't belabor this slide, but I did want to point out that the quantity of nutrients applied in any of these products is quite small. The maximum rate applied of a nutrient in this study was 3.5 pounds of nitrogen per acre in Fertirain, which is just a tiny fraction of the 200 to 300 pounds of nitrogen most soybeans take up on an annual per acre basis. Most nutrient application rates are well under a pound per acre in this study. In addition to measuring yield at the end of the season, we also took soil samples so that we could see if there was a difference in site response based on pre-season soil nutrient status. We also pulled leaf tissue samples before applying foliar nutrients and 2 weeks after so that we could see how the leaf nutrient status changed based on foliar fertilizer application. With that, let's get into some results. Here you can see the yield by treatment averaged across all our sites. The untreated control is on the left, and the black line within each box is the median yield. The upper and lower edges of the box show the first and third quartile of data. The boxes all line up, which indicates that the yield did not vary by treatment, and the boxes are all roughly the same size, so all the treatments had a similar variation in yield. But none of these boxes are actually identical to the control. So we ran some statistical tests to make sure that the differences between the boxes aren't actually meaningful. Typically for a small plot trial, this means running an ANOVA, which looks at all the variation in yield among the plots and determines which proportion of the variation is due to treatment, site, or replication. We included replication as a random factor in this model, and we used a special type of degrees of freedom analysis that allows us to analyze data when different sites have different levels of replication. It's not super important for our interpretation of this ANOVA, but I wanted to point it out because the ANOVA table may look different from others you've seen in the past. The ANOVA calculates an F-value and uses that and the degrees of freedom to produce a p-value. The p-value is how we determine whether the differences in yield between plots is random or whether it has a pattern that can be related to site, treatment, or the combination of site and treatment. Since the p-value in the top and bottom rows of this value are both higher than our alpha value of 0.05, we would say there is no significant difference in yield between treatment or between combinations of site and treatment. There is a significant difference in yield based on site, which is to be expected when you're doing research across 16 states. As a side note, if you've seen me present just our 2019 data in the past, you may have expected there to be a single site year with a pretty big difference in yield that we had previously described as random error. But here, when we pool all the data together, we don't see a difference in yield based on treatment overall or when combined with sites. That's why it's important to replicate trials over time and space, and when we analyze all our replicated data together, we had enough data to show that there was no difference in any site. But you only tested 6 products in 46 environments. How can we trust these results? This is a question I get a lot, and it's super valid. We all want there to be some magic cheap foliar product that will give you a huge yield boost, but we haven't found it. In fact, our results line up pretty closely with the last 30 years of foliar fertilizer trials in Michigan and Iowa. In Iowa, there were 3 responsive site years out of a 26 site year trial. This was a study that looked at nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, and some other micronutrients. And only around 11% of sites saw an increase in yield when foliar fertilizer was applied. And then in an even larger set of 117 foliar fertilizer trials testing many different nutrients, only 9 site years had an increase in yield associated with fertilizer application. There are other trials testing foliar nutrients, including some manganese work in Ohio, but I don't have time to go through all of them today. I will say that I have not been able to find any peer-reviewed studies since the 1970s that contradict our results. Prophylactic foliar fertilizers rarely increase soybean yield. Another comment I get a lot is that we're not showing trials on the specific product someone is interested in. And I get that, but we can't test everything, and we haven't tested everything. I will say, though, that there are only 18 essential nutrients for plant growth, and over the last few decades, we've studied many combinations of these nutrients at different rates and different timings, and we are still not seeing a combination that consistently improves soybean yield when applied prophylactically. There is one last comment I want to dissect with you today, and it goes something like this. It doesn't hurt my yield to apply foliar fertilizers, so I'm going to apply it anyway. And I don't know of any cases of foliar fertilizer reducing yield when applied at the kinds of rates we're talking about here. Foliar fertilizers can lower your profits, though. Foliar fertilizer products cost around $4 to $20 an acre, and if you're not getting 1 to 3 bushels per acre higher yield, that product isn't paying for itself. And then you have to figure in application costs. If you're already making an R3 application for insecticide or fungicide, then a foliar fertilizer isn't going to increase your application costs. But if you're making a separate pass across your field, you have to account for the cost of fuel and wear and tear on your equipment. You also need to account for the reduced yield you see from the effect of driving across a bean field after R1. Since every time you go across your field during reproductive growth, wheel traffic alone can reduce yields by 1 to 5%. To truly break even, foliar fertilizers need to increase yield enough to cover the cost of the product, the cost of application, and the potential for lower yield due to wheel damage. And we just don't have evidence that prophylactic foliar fertilizers can do that. With all that being said, there are going to be new products coming out that you might be interested in. As that happens, I'd recommend you think about 3 things. Are you seeing trial results that took place over multiple years and multiple sites? This is important because if you run enough locations, you can probably get a favorable result at least one site. Instead, you want to see consistent results across many sites because that will give you a better indication of whether this product may work on your field. Can you get information about this product from someone who isn't selling it? Maybe your county extension folks have run trials on it, or an on-farm research network in your region. Maybe there's a very similar product with a similar nutrient breakdown that you can see some study results from. And finally, can you try the product on some test strips on your own farm? Instead of applying the product to all of your acres at once, try doing some smaller studies, either with the help of some extension people in your region or other researchers that can help you make sure that the results are analyzed appropriately. I'm sharing these tips not because I think foliar fertilizers never work, but because I've seen enough trials on these to be pretty skeptical about prophylactic foliar fertilizer application. You can find more information about this trial on the coolbean.info website under the new results soybean section. I will also drop the link to that report in the description for this video. And with that, I would like to thank some people that made this work possible. I mentioned Rachel, Laura, and Sean at the beginning of this video, but I'd also like to thank the Bean team. That's the lab I work in here at UW-Madison, and they were very helpful with backpack spraying all of the sites and soil sampling with me. And then I'd like to thank all of our research collaborators that helped us gather data from 16 states. This research would not be possible without them, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to work with such a wonderful group of researchers. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching this video today. I look forward to hopefully sharing some more research soon.